Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome back to Thriving at Juniata. I'm Matthew Damschotter, Vice President for Student Life and Dean of Students, and your host for our webinar. And I have my faithful colleague, Diavion, here with me, sophomore student.
It's my intro. I was waiting for you to finish. Diavion, second year engineering physics POE, and esteemed co-host to Matthew Damschotter.
Just one of my absolute favorites.
And I'm Kati Truman, Dean of International Education.
And we're so excited to have you here, Kati, Dean Choman. And, as I was thinking about the presence you would bring and sort of information, I was thinking that a lot of schools have an international office. And at Juniata, we have a Center for International Education. And the reason I think that we do is because of you.
Oh.
And the way that you frame sort of experiences abroad as fundamentally purposeful and educational and enriching, and not just sort of casual adventures,
right,
but really as ways to capture culture and knowledge and information that is essential to the learning experiences at Juniata. And so to that end, it's a pleasure to welcome you to our webinar, but also just to have you as a colleague. We are blessed on our campus to have your commitment and your expertise and your knowledge.
Thank you very much. So, yeah, I'm going to ask you, are you going to study abroad?
I plan to.
Good. Okay.
I'm actually working out my registered classes for the spring right now. I'm trying to push everything from like a backload to my courses for my 4 years. I'm trying to push it forward so I have more free time later.
Yes.
Because I think the only place that I could go for physics is Germany, and a lot of people, like the professors, tell me that it's a really nice place to do some science work. So.
And there are some other places, so we'll definitely maybe talk at some point about your options, because there are good options. So Matthew, thank you for that introduction.
Yeah.
And I do believe that Juniata is very important to the educational experience, that study abroad is important to the educational experience of students at Juniata. We want to have students who are ethical leaders and people who engage in service in the global community. So we want them to know about the world, and we want them to develop skills and knowledge and ways of interacting and being that I believe is developed through experiences abroad. And we also have wonderful experiences on campus to engage with students who have lots of different perspectives from around the world. And I believe it makes us better humans to spend time out of our own cultural context and to be able to be in a place where we can see how do people experience the world, how do they live, what are their concerns, and what do we share in common.
So true. So true. And, in some respects on campus, it is a journey. I might encounter students who are exchange students or who are four-year degree seeking students from another country. I might take a class around language or culture, and then I might engage in a study abroad experience and, be that student for someone else. And I think it's nice to see students move through that trajectory of possibilities here.
Yeah. And what we do very well at Juniata, and we are known in the United States for being able to make study abroad a possibility for so many students. And that means helping to facilitate the logistics of that. So getting a passport and navigating the experience of applying for a program abroad, but also the financial aspect of it. So helping students to identify and to work through application processes for internal scholarships and for external scholarships. So that's all a part of the work that we do in very personally working with students to make it a possibility for them.
Well, that's a really good point to bring up early, because I think for a lot of students, for me as a student going to college, I just felt like study abroad was out of my reach, that it was going to be more, it was just not something that my family could help support or that I would possibly ask them. They had given so much to sort of make college a possibility for me. And then as I began to explore, and it really wasn't until my senior year, and by that I mean my super senior year, that possibility. It was only then that I realized that there were resources and supports out there that could make it possible, and also that maybe I have been misinformed about the cost of study abroad. Can you talk a little bit about how we make it affordable or accessible to students, kind of without regard maybe to their own, family income or resources?
So I think we work very hard at that. And at Juniata, we looked in the past few years, the students who do study abroad, over about 65% of students are they are designated as having moderate to very high financial need. So these are students who are receiving scholarships and loans. Juniata has students pay their tuition and receive those scholarships and loans and grants for the semester or for the time that they are abroad. And then the Center for International Education works very closely with students to identify internal scholarships, and there are a number. The most popular scholarship that students receive is a scholarship that is intended for students who demonstrate moderate to high financial need. And students can receive, it's called the Keppel Endowment, named after the former president.
President Keppel.
President
Thank you,
Keppel.
President Keppel.
And
He has a building.
He does.
Yes,
He's been
Keppel
very,
Hall.
very generous.
And so students can receive up to $1,500 to help pay for the cost of study abroad. And so those are given out for short-term study abroad and for longer-term study abroad. We have also been very successful with students applying to national scholarships, namely the Gilman Scholarship,
Mhm.
which is specifically for students who receive Pell Grants through the US government. And students can get somewhere between $2,000 to $5,000 for an experience abroad. And we usually have between 5 to 6 students a year who are getting Gilman scholarships.
And that supplements, it doesn't supplant
No.
institutional aid, it supplements
supplements.
institutional aid, which
Yes.
makes it an add and really does, I think, help open the doors so you can cover some of the expenses maybe for flight or travel or, even cultural engagement once you're abroad.
Yeah, and what we do also do, because we have this individualized, very personalized approach, when students have initial costs that are difficult, so applying for a passport or getting an airplane ticket, we work with them to help to provide the support for those expenses so that they can get the airplane ticket or get their passport. So it's not a barrier for their participation in study abroad. And so it's something that we often do during preparation for study abroad to help students with
Yeah.
those costs.
It's amazing. I mean, I speak highly of you because it's well deserved, and I think part of that is about the care, the continued care, the monitoring, sort of the essential kind of communication that takes place between CIE and students, even through the term of service,
Yeah.
abroad, and it's good to know that you and your staff maintain a connectedness with our students, regardless of where they go in the world.
Yeah.
And that technology allows for that, but that really it's the ethos of the office that affords, I think, that outreach on an ongoing basis.
He really tries to make the guests blush every time.
I just work with amazing people. I mean, we just are surrounded by just truly, truly incredible folks.
Well, I think we all understand. Many of us are students. So for myself, I'm a child of an immigrant family, and so even though I had the experience of growing up in a family where there was a different language spoken and people had come from elsewhere in the world to be here, I also was a first generation college student, and I I hadn't had travel experience before being in college, and so I have a personal sort of commitment to wanting students to feel like they're being supported in the experience as they prepare and while they're abroad. And so we also have very close partnerships with the schools where we are sending students abroad. And so we know that if a student is having questions or problems or there's something happening in the world, that we are a phone call away or a video chat away, that we can talk with our partners to know if our students are doing okay, what support can we provide. And so we understand that it can be a big step for students to take to leave the United States and go to a place that's entirely new and navigate that new environment. And so we want to But at the same time, we also think some of that difficulty is okay too, because then students, they develop skills in terms of being more flexible,
Right.
being able to navigate difficulty on their own and having a sense of pride about that. And that is a part of the intentional part of the experience of,
To
you know,
become global citizens.
yeah,
To
yeah,
be able to navigate the world and
yes,
different cultures.
yes.
You know, it's interesting. You know, we talked about student development a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Gilbert, and one of the pieces of that was this theory about challenge and support. That students need challenge to grow, but they also need support
Mhm.
so that the challenge isn't overwhelming. And I
Yes,
think that that's the good balance
yes,
that they get
absolutely.
through study abroad experiences in your office.
Yes, yes.
Well, I studied in Cuba. That was my
Uh-huh.
my undergraduate study abroad, and then I have the fortune of leading a course to the Dominican Republic now, which is always a delight.
Mhm.
You've talked about Germany. What if Germany wasn't a possibility? Where would you study if you could choose anywhere in the world?
Anywhere in the
Anywhere in the world.
I don't know, cause I originally when I came to college, I didn't want to do study abroad.
Mhm.
It didn't really interest me because it felt like a vacation in which I had to do schoolwork, and I don't want to do schoolwork on a vacation. Like I don't want to go someplace that I really want to go, but I'm obligated to. Like I have all these other responsibilities that I have to take care of, so I wasn't interested in the idea of it. But people keep, you know, like a voice in my ear telling me that I should. So I'm considering it more, but I still don't really
You don't
know.
know where in the world you would want to go.
I don't know to study
To
and work
live, to
to
sort of
live.
engage, to soak up
There's no
everything
place
that
like
it has
there's
to
no place
offer.
like home. There's no place like home. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know. I think England
Mhm.
maybe.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I've wanted to see England for a while,
Mm.
just to experience it. Um, I want to go to Canada
Mhm.
at some point.
Our basketball team just got back from Canada.
Me too.
I was very jealous of that.
Yeah,
And
the French
the
club.
French club
Yeah,
just
so
went to
what do you take French? You could
I've
go
n-
with it. You
I've
could
never
just go
taken
on
French.
the French club trip to Canada. We
to
went to
Quebec, right?
Montreal and Quebec, which really is kind of like a short-term experience. We went with a French professor. He walked us through the cities and gave us the history because in Quebec it's French speaking and it's very European and we got to eat crepes and other interesting things. So that happens every fall break.
I like food.
Yeah, so
I would love to eat my way through Nepal. Nepal is the next place
is
that I
it?
want to go.
Yeah, that's
I
where I'd
just
like
have a
to
real
go.
passion for that. Well, but to my point, from Juniata, you really can go anywhere in the world. We don't just send students
Mm.
to England or
Yes.
France or, kind of what I would imagine are common study abroad safe or study abroad destinations. We have students all over the world.
Yeah, so over 60% of students who do study abroad for a semester or year, they go to a location where English is not the first language. They may not be studying in the language. So, for example, if you went to Germany, it's possible that you might be studying in English, but you would still be in a German speaking environment. And our students do go most often to very big universities, something different than Juniata.
Mhm.
Again, we think that's a good thing. It gives them a different experience. But we have such good relationships with those partners that we're able to help the students to navigate through that big university experience, and oftentimes in a place where it's a different language. And it's good because the students become so aware of themselves and how it is that they can relate to other people. I think it also makes you a much more empathetic person because if you've struggled to order a doner kebab in Germany, so like I don't even know what that's kind of like a falafel
Oh.
or something or a lamb sandwich.
Oh,
So you struggle to order that. I think you might be a little more empathetic about the student in Baker who is trying
mm,
to order something that is available in the line. So it makes you a good person in terms of understanding other people.
yeah, that's great. What about, are there academic disciplines or POEs where students, they're so booked on campus that they can't take a semester away?
So most faculty, and almost all faculty that I can think of at Juniata have had international experiences and support students for having international experiences. In some programs like engineering physics, which is what you said you are,
Mhm.
it may be the case that you decide you're going to do other courses, not just courses in physics. And so that's quite possible. I think there are some programs of study, programs of emphasis where the what you need to take in certain semesters, you
Yeah.
have to be more planful about whether or not you would take those courses abroad,
Mm.
or you might use that semester abroad as an opportunity to do some of the general education courses, or maybe you have a secondary emphasis, and so you could take something in that. The other number of opportunities we have are with the short-term courses abroad, much like you lead, Dean
To
Van
the Dominican
Charter.
Republic, taking applications now.
Yes, and the element of that course is community engaged learning,
Yeah.
which for the students as an experience is wonderful, but also in terms of their professional preparation. So understanding how to work on a project in community. And I'm thinking about you, like with engineering physics. I don't know what you want to do one day, if it's building bridges or
He does want to build a bridge.
yeah, so imagine that you could be doing that in the US or maybe somewhere abroad, but you really would have to have an understanding of how to work in a team of people who are coming from different academic disciplines, but also different cultural backgrounds. And, especially in the context of building a bridge in, Kenya or something, to understand, what does the community need and how might this bridge change the flow of goods and people. And so that's the other element that I know with study abroad is that students are developing skills and ways of functioning in the world that prepare them for their careers,
I
that
love
prepare
that.
them to work in diverse teams, prepare them to know if somebody is saying something, what is it that they mean,
Right.
because you have a sensibility about that.
When I went abroad, people, I think you were just lucky to go abroad. You went, you took a class, or you took a couple classes, you came home. Now I see students go abroad and they're doing an internship
Yes.
at their study abroad site. They're doing research at their study abroad site. They're taking part in these, what I think are just extremely engaged learning experiences at the study abroad site.
Yes.
Is that more common? Is it growing ever more common?
It is. It is more common, and it's growing ever more common because students want to develop those professional skills. They want to have experiences that they can demonstrate to future employers, have that on their resume, be able to talk about it. So, for example, you could go to London. You could go and do an internship in London through an internship program that we have, and you take a few courses, but the focus of your time is working for 20, 25 hours a week in an internship in your field of study. And yes, students are very interested in that, and they want the practical experience. It's not, in the turn of the century, it was called the Grand Tour. Students would go around, like you were saying, and just wanting to explore, and it's a vacation, right? That's what it used to be. But nowadays, study abroad is really about that practicality of
it's a deep dive.
It's how it fits into your program of study. What are the skills and the knowledge that you're gaining that's going to prepare you for after graduation? And what students tell me, no matter what field of study it is people that they were interviewing with wanted to know more about that part of their undergraduate experience. Tell me more about that time in Germany, or tell me more about that internship in London. Because in the United States, it still is unusual for students to study abroad. It's, I think somewhere less than 10% of undergraduate students in the US study abroad.
And more than half of Juniatians.
Yes, and more than half of Juniatians in some way have a significant international experience. And if you compare that to the rest of the world, and that's who one day you'll be competing with people your age for positions and working in companies, multinational companies, those students have had experiences abroad because it's more, other countries encourage that more, and there's just more activity as part of the university experience. But it is an important part of the experience here at Juniata. you are learning about that as you are here.
You have a great sales pitch.
Yeah, do.
I mean,
I know.
I
I'm
must
telling
say,
you. I'm
because
telling you.
I'm closer now to wanting to go. I'm like 60-40 now in wanting to go than I was before this
Well,
conversation.
we're still taking applications for the Dominican Republic.
I was thinking more London or Germany now because it's hard. Like I feel like how you mentioned in the application process in which leaving out of school when you're applying for a job, and um, I keep thinking about my resume, and when
Yeah.
I feel like I fill my resume up with a lot of things, but it always seems bare to me,
Mhm.
like not enough,
Mhm.
and um, I think it's not enough in which it catches your eye and separates me all that much.
Mhm.
Although there are things that I'm proud of, it doesn't really kick the door open. So the idea of showing the flexibility that I can have is definitely something that I would like to put on there. The
And
thing
there's
that
two pieces of that. One, we need to get over that imposter syndrome where you're feeling like your resume is less than. It
Mhm.
is wonderful. But two, that really is a good experience. And
Yeah.
it does differentiate you and it does give you skills that you can talk about and explore and open up about that differentiate you from other folks. But not having that doesn't mean that somehow you're less than in terms of the great experiences that
Yes.
you've had.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to lose that piece.
Yeah.
I think the reason why I was still so stuck in that mindset was because of knowing who I am and where I'm from, and by that I mean I've always been an empathetic person. Like
Mhm.
I find it in most situations easy for me to connect with another person and kind of put myself in their shoes. More times than not, I'll be the one to sit with someone going through something. I have empathy for the person that doesn't speak English well when I had friends that would find it amusing. And I never found it amusing. I kind of felt bad. So I was never above someone else. And growing up in New York City, I see people from everywhere
Mhm.
all the time. It Everyone being different just seemed very normal, and I got along with many different kinds of people. In high school, I went to Brooklyn Tech.
Mhm. I know Brooklyn. I stay right there.
Oh,
I
you
would
were
go to Brooklyn
you were in Fort Greene
in
neighborhood.
Fort Greene. Yep, just the next street over.
Nice. There was
I love it.
you see everybody. You see a
Yes.
bunch of people that look very different leaving that building all the time. And just imagine being in there surrounded by everybody. I got along with everybody. I know how to interact with people of different cultures and races and such. And I felt like putting in more effort to try and be more flexible when it came to different kinds of people seemed redundant because
Mhm.
I easily can do that. I didn't feel like I needed more practice in such a thing because
Mhm.
I felt personally as a very flexible person. So that also was something that people would pitch to me about studying abroad that
Mhm.
I wasn't really attracted to because it wasn't a skill that I needed to learn.
Sure.
Um, so I think you bringing up how beneficial it is outside of that,
Yeah.
outside of that aspect, really helps because it is something that you could put on a resume, something that you could talk to other people about. And you're the second person to tell me that going into an interview, they'll ask like, "Tell me about
Mhm.
this
Mm-hmm.
time in which
Mhm.
you went there." So if I heard it twice, it definitely means something. So
And I think the other thing about it, I do believe this deeply. I believe it should be, and that it can be a part of every student's education at Juniata, because we put so much resource into we put so many resources into supporting students to have the experience that I feel like it's a part of the overall experience, and that it achieves the mission of the educational mission of the college, um, and it adds another dimension to you. So you talked about the way that you are and the experiences that you had growing up in New York City and then going to Brooklyn Tech, but going abroad will also add this other dimension or this other element. I look at this is how I look at intercultural learning. For me, it's like your mind goes this way. It may
Mm,
not be that you change or that but it's just everything becomes suddenly so much bigger, and you just can't see things this way anymore. It's just, you just have this view of, oh wait, maybe this is
mm.
how this person is thinking about this, and why this is a challenge to get over this particular conversation, or so it's just this expansion of your mind. I also see it
Well,
like a collage, right?
Mm.
So you can see the world in just sort of simple patterns, but study abroad or intercultural learning, it just makes it like this whole mosaic, this whole collage of colors, and
Mm.
things are mixed up, and I love
well,
that.
it's interesting because the character of this place, and you talk about, your mind expanding. We have a peace and conflict, POE. We have students who marched across the bridge in Selma. We have students who want to change the world and go from here and do that. And we have students who, when they study abroad, choose places where there's sometimes turmoil, where, things are happening. And that means, that I think you and your, team really have to be on point and sort of making sure that you're attentive to the world and where students are in it. Can you talk a little bit about how we help
Yeah.
students to, maintain connectedness even when, there are risks involved?
Yes. So the risk part of study abroad is a big part of the work that we do, and we have to, as you say, be very attentive to what's happening in the world. If it's political unrest or natural disasters or things happening, and we do that through various resources, through the U.S. Department of State, through associated government organizations. We also have a very comprehensive insurance that provides for a lot of support in terms of managing the student experience abroad. It's not just related to health, but also managing the safety of students abroad. Part of that is also helping the students to have some responsibility, or a lot of responsibility for themselves abroad. So we have a very extensive pre-departure where we spend time with students, and they go through different trainings to learn about health and safety abroad, to learn about responsible behavior abroad,
Mhm.
to understand if something happens, what are their immediate resources. So we do that before they go. While the students are abroad, we maintain contact with them. We have check-ins with them on email. We set up Skype calls. So there's a director of study abroad, Caitlin Murphy, and she has been setting up Skype calls with students to check in, to see how they're doing, see if they have questions. Sometimes it's usually very small problems that a student might write us about, and we're able to call someone at the site abroad or write an email to someone at the site abroad and say, can you help us with this? I'll give you an example. A student abroad had an ATM, had a wallet stolen. That
Mm,
happens. That
right.
happens in a lot of places. And the student was waiting for a new ATM card, which has not arrived. And the student's parent called because the student has no money and hasn't been able to borrow any money from
Right.
any friends, and really had 2 potatoes left. That was
Oh,
the story that was told to me. I wrote to our partner school, and within 12 hours, the partner school had written back and said, we have a food bank on campus
mm.
specifically to help students. Please have the student come in and access what's there. And sure enough, the student was able to go in. And,
Get a little butter and some
yes,
milk and make a
yeah,
mashed potato.
yes, no, hopefully there was like tuna or something else. But it's that kind of, it's that kind of support. And I know what happens is when we get exchange students from those sites, which I'm going to talk to you about having an international roommate at some point during your time at Juniata. When we have exchange students, we similarly will support them, and we
Mhm.
will do above and beyond. And so I know that the partners appreciate that, and they pay attention to the Juniata students abroad. So I have I have confidence in our partners to know. Most recently, there was political unrest in Ecuador,
Mhm.
and our students were actually taken into the homes of the site directors in order to ensure that they were safe and they were comfortable. So it's that kind of personal experience that extends itself to the partner schools that we have abroad.
Yeah, it's just a tremendous testament to the relationships that you build and the investment of time and care. And I know you visit the sites that our students are studying in. I know that we're investing our resources and in making sure that those places are safe and appropriate and suitable
Yes.
for our students in terms of support. Well, for parents maybe who think, oh, it's hard for me to even imagine that, my son or daughter is 3 hours away. I can't imagine my student, being 1,000 miles away. What advice do you have for the parent who's preparing
Yeah.
for that semester or even 3 weeks abroad?
Now I'm thinking about my mom hearing me say, I want to go to Germany.
Right?
I'm thinking about the look on her face. Yeah, I want
And
to
it's
hear
like,
this.
So I'm going to talk to the families now. I believe it is very important. I have 2 children. One of those children is a graduate of Juniata, and actually she spends a lot of her time out in the world working on projects that are related to development, sort of women's rights and health for women. And so she travels around the world doing that work. Um, it is hard. It was hard for us to send our children off to school because we live in Huntington. It's a small town. It's very safe. Everyone knows everyone, and so that was a difficult step. We knew that our children probably wanted to spend some time abroad, and that wasn't easy because we were worried about things, about safety, about how do they get settled into the place where they're living. Our son actually ended up studying abroad in West Africa and lived with a family, and it felt very far away to us. He lived in Cameroon for a semester. So I do think one of the things that we do very well is we are open to families reaching out to us to ask us questions about the study abroad site, about process, and then in conjunction with the student, we can have more specific conversations about the student's experience. So I think communication is very important. As Dean Damschroeder says, it's not just I who visit sites abroad, but we send many people from the college, faculty and staff, to review sites, to help us develop relationships so that we have a lot of people who have an understanding of the site, of the city,
Mhm.
of what it might be like for a student to show up and need to, get into a building and get to their class and all of that. So I think communication is very important. We have a good website which has a lot of program information. And I think the way that we have organized the planning and the pre departure is all information that can be shared with families so that families can see, oh, this is what happens when you go to Germany and you need to get a residency permit. This is the information about cost abroad. We in the case with Ecuador most recently, I actually called families of students who were in Ecuador to explain the situation that was happening and how we were helping to support students. I reached out to families by email to give them information. So I think information communication, it helps to alleviate a lot of
Yeah.
anxiety. Like, yeah.
I know for me, when we go to the Dominican, for a lot of those students, it is their first time out of the United States. And, for some of them, sometimes it's the longest time that they've been kind of out of touch with their parents because cell service isn't great there. And, so it's spotty. And so I actually assembled a text list of parent numbers and would sort of and would message kind of at milestone moments to say, we've arrived, we're safe in country, students are settled into their homestays. Today we spent some time, in this service project and we would send a few pictures, just so that families could stay current. And we found that to be really helpful and valuable, I think, and families certainly appreciated it on the other end.
Yeah.
So
And I also think, having students talk with their families about what to expect or making a communication plan with their families. What I like to tell students is this study abroad experience is an opportunity to even develop further as a young adult.
Mhm.
It's your opportunity. It's your I have a very good friend who's from Nigeria, and he's a professor at another college. And he would tell me about students going abroad. He would say, "Let them have their experience." So that's what I like to say to families: let them have their experience. Right? It's important. It's important for you to be able to navigate the world on your own because your mom's not. My son is moving to Thailand at the end of this week,
Mm.
and that's very far away from me. But I have to let him. He's 25, and he has to have his own life now, and start to navigate the world without me.
Oh,
So,
well, I'd go visit if I were you. I'd invite myself. Oh, that's funny. Well, thank you so much.
yeah, thank
The
you.
work that you do, the sort of lives that you've changed, and providing these opportunities, it's absolutely, I think, the work of this college to sort of make that happen. And you are just such a core of it. And so
Thank you.
it's been a joy to have you with us.
Thank you.
And if you have questions, if your students have questions, certainly send them to the Oler Center,
Mhm.
second floor. Email studyabroad at
Juniata.
juniata.edu.
Yeah.
Our staff in the Center for International Education is accessible and
Mhm.
available, and will answer all questions.
Yes,
So,
and when you come to campus to pick up your student or drop them off, feel free to come over to the Oler Center. We're right next door to the Enrollment Center, and we're available to talk and show you around.
all right. Well,
Thanks.
have a good night. Thanks for
Thanks.
tuning in with us.